Thank you for coming to class. My name is Wanda Dowd, and my speech today is going to be on torture versus enhanced interrogation. What's the difference? You have an evaluation in front of you. All I ask is that you fill it out as I'm talking. It'll give me some great feedback so I can utilize it later. The purpose of my speech is to persuade you guys to understand why enhanced interrogation is better than torture and should be used in order to intervene or stop any acts of terrorism. Think back to, and this may be a touchy subject to a lot of individuals. Before I even get that far, again, let's introduce ourselves.
Brittany Kaplan.
Jaco.
Dennis Pasmasian.
Sarah Handy.
Thank you. This topic is so personal to me, that's why I forgot for you to introduce yourselves, but we can continue now. Okay, think back to 9/11. Just imagine you're sitting in your office and you look out the window and you see this big airplane coming towards your building. What do? Nothing. Your life has just ended. There's no way possible for you to get out. Now just think and say to yourself, imagine what could have been done or accomplished if we had gathered real intelligence from the terrorists way beforehand. Could we have stopped that from happening? Or maybe not. I'm going to give you some real information where by having certain, by utilizing certain interrogation, we can actually stop acts of terrorism, okay? Terrorism is something that we need to abolish and not to take over, so it's not to take over our country and bring fear to everyone who lives here. The government needs to be a lot more proactive than reactive in the war on terrorism. We need human intelligence, which is people on the inside that can actually work among these individuals to give us needed information in time in order for us to act faster. Terrorism can be prevented with the use of several types of agreed upon techniques like psychological mind games and enhanced interrogation as a means for getting information from suspected terrorists. Earlier, I sent out an audience analysis to all of you. At least 80% of you agree that torture is not needed. I will guarantee you, by the end of this speech, you'll think again. 80% of you also felt that the information gained from the terrorists may not even be accurate. That may be a little bit true, but how do you know unless you take the information and run with it to find out? You'll learn more about that also. And some of you even felt that terrorism or torture is not a long-term solution, and that is correct. Torture is not a long-term solution for terrorism. That's why now we're going to think of new ways, and we have thought of new ways in order to enhance our information that we now have and that we can use instead of using torture. Okay? Any questions so far? So we ask ourselves, terrorism and torture, what is it? Well, terrorism is the unlawful use of threatened use of force or violence by a person or an organized group against innocent, and I repeat, innocent civilians or property with the intention of intimidating or coercing societies or governments, often for ideological or political reasons. Torture is the infliction of severe pain as a means of punishment or coercion. Coercion is the unlawful act of compelling a person to do or to abstain from doing something by depriving him of the exercise of free will, particularly by the use of threat or physical or moral force. So according to economist.com, the opinion polls, in 2008, an opinion poll was put together. And if you look at this opinion poll, you're going to know that certain countries, 80%, Britain, France, and Spain, agree that all torture should be prohibited. Why do you think they feel that way?
Unreliable information.
Britain, France, and Spain. Unreliable information, what else?
Maybe they don't have as many threats or attacks against them.
They didn't back then. They do now. Okay? This was done in 2008. If you look at China and Poland, what you're going to notice is that most of the countries do agree that there's some degree of torture should be allowed. So you have your mild torture and your extreme torture. Your mild torture is really not called torture. It's called enhanced interrogation, and then there is torture, okay? So you're going to look at the red and notice at the bottom, Nigeria, Turkey, and India believe in some degree of torture should be allowed. And they're poor countries because their terrorism happens to them almost every day. India, they get bombs all the time, constantly, from terrorism. We hear it on the news all the time. India, Turkey, Nigeria. And when you look at the United States, we're sort of in between. We sort of think it's okay, and then we don't think it's okay. We like to use mild torture versus the hard torture, so we're like in the middle. But if you would have taken this poll a couple of years ago before 9/11, most people were against torture then, especially the United States. After 9/11, we've now gone up to, we feel that some torture should be done in order to get important information. There are over 100 countries in the world using torture as a means of getting information from criminals and terrorists. Over 100 countries use it, and they've been using it for a very long time. Torture has been utilized for centuries. Yes, some of the methods used are crude and can cause loss of life, yet they're still effective. An article entitled Time to Think About Torture by Jonathan Altair explains how one terrorist in the 1980s, his name was Abu Nadal, by threatening his families, the Philippine police reportedly helped crack the 1993 World Trade bombings. We were having all those little bombings. They stopped 11 of them because of the information that they got from him. And it wasn't by torture, it was by enhanced interrogation. They gave him fear. We'll send you back to the Israelis who you work for, and they'll kill you anyway. So wouldn't it be better to stay with us and we'll employ you, believe it or not? That's how he gave up the information. That saved a lot of lives versus the lives that was lost on 9/11. So by convincing him that he was going to be returned to them, that made him scared, and he gave up the information. Plus, he gave up all his accomplices along with it. Okay? So this method of psychological fear being used is just one way in which we can get information from suspected terrorists. For those of you that object strongly to the use of torture to get high-quality information, surely this speaks for itself. You save millions by, I'm not going to use the word killing one, but by torturing one, you can save millions. Ask yourself the question, is it worth it or not? I'll let you be the judge of that. All of these methods should prove useful in getting information that can save lives, which they have. Some would argue and say that they could have gotten the information in another way without using torture. Personally, I don't think so. Yes, we sometimes say they could lie. How will we prove it? Well, like they do now. They take information and run with it in order to see if it's true or not. If it's not true, they'll soon find out. Torture is not the long-term solution to the problem, but it can slow down the acts of terrorism. A short-term solution can be the utilization of enhanced interrogation and the use of psychological mind games, which was put in place by the Bush administration. Yes, this same thing that was put in place by the Bush administration is now being challenged, because they found out that they've gone too far. They've pushed it a little bit towards torture. So now it's being held back, and they're looking at that and they're scrutinizing it carefully. So we have to be careful not to take what we can use and abuse it. So now with the Obama administration, he's being careful not to scrutinize what they've already done, because you don't want to say, well, torture, we need to stop it because it's not going anywhere, because it can save lives. If you pull back, now you're going to be the cruel person by the government or by the people in the government. They're going to say, oh my God, he hates torture. But yet people are dying every day here in the United States. They can make acts of terrorism now that we can't stop. So, terrorists are criminals who use their ideologies and sometimes religious beliefs to carry their plots to fruition. They are not military, but wish everyone to see them as such, soldiers of God. They destroy even their own country in order to get their message across. The government needs to make sure that we have everything in place and are handling ourselves appropriately. We cannot afford to backpedal because we'll lose our credibility as a nation. We need to put in place human intelligence that can become part of the terrorist group in order to stay informed. We can't ignore that a terrorist was captured and gave up information pertaining to the bombing, possible bombing of the Brooklyn Bridge. That information, now we